Are you still looking for exceptional aim, but seemingly no guide is really able to help you? Well, lucky for you, my name is Casey, and I've been creating Valorant guides for the last 4+ years. I've quite literally seen every single aim guide posted since Valorant's release, and not only that, but I've seen most of them in adjacent games as well. I'm not an aim pro myself, but I am an Immortal 3 ranked player in Valorant, and I've done a ton of research on the topic, so that's why today I'm going to be bringing you the ultimate aim guide for Valorant. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about developing Immortal level aim in Valorant, from beginner to advanced, and my hope is that by the end of this video, you know exactly what you need to do to start climbing. Sounds good to you? Sweet, let's get into it. So the first thing that you need to know about aiming in Valorant is that you actually want to work smarter instead of harder. We've all seen those crazy flicks of people like Tens just going for the nastiest shot that you've ever seen, or someone completely 180ing and landing a kill on somebody behind them. Now, although these sorts of things might be considered good aim, they're not technically considered good fundamentals. Although flicks are flashy, you don't really want to have to flick like this. It is incredibly inefficient, and you have to cover a really long distance, and as a consequence, it's also really inconsistent. You see, the shorter the flick that you have to make, generally the easier and more replicable a flick is. Most players can do a small flick like this all day, but you notice that the further that you get from your target, the more difficult that this becomes. So you want your crosshair to be as close to the target's head before they appear on your screen as possible. This is where something called crosshair placement comes in. This is such an ingrained part of tactical FPS games that literally every single aim video you watch will tell you just how important this is. When you're walking around the map, you want your crosshair to be at head level wherever an enemy might show up. So that way, if an enemy comes around the corner, all you have to do is a small adjustment and click. This is largely part of the reason that you might hear people say things like aiming in Valorant isn't hard. The game is fairly predictable once you get good at it, and there are only so many ways that your opponents can move. And because of this, oftentimes the best, most consistent aimers in Valorant are the ones who need to aim the least. When you compare this to a game like Overwatch, where you have characters dashing all around and maybe flying through the sky, your adjustments are going to be a lot larger, and it's going to be a slightly different skill set. This doesn't mean that you'll never get caught off guard though and have to do a massive flick. This is where something called the Bardos method comes in. This is a method developed by the aim training community, which involves separating your standard flick into two separate parts. If you ever need to make a big adjustment on your target, here's what is recommended for you to do to make things more consistent. First is the initial flick. This is a fast flick where you are deliberately sacrificing accuracy. You know that when making a large flick, you're less likely to land that shot. So instead of trying to land it, what you're doing is you're just trying to get as close to the target as possible. Then after this first initial flick, we'll be making a second adjustment immediately after, taking advantage of that shorter distance created and increasing our consistency. It's really simple. The first flick is intended to close the distance. The second flick is intended to kill. Adding in a second step to your flick sounds like it would result in you getting yourself killed, but this is the process that many pros use when looking to land a difficult flick, and the more that you practice it, the much faster you'll get. That's why we've actually gone ahead and created a brand new Calm Aim course over at SkillCapped that details exactly how you can practice and improve these fundamentals in just a couple short weeks. We'll teach you all the proper aiming techniques that pros use to not only make themselves more consistent, but also to help them get more kills like this. This course is also accompanied by our own personal aim training routine, where in just 15 minutes a day, we can take your aim from this to this. Not only that, but along with our Calm Aim course, you'll get access to an hour-long Aim God Masterclass that details all the things that we won't have time to go over in this video. We'll teach you all the little tricks that pros use within the game to make aiming as easy as possible so that you can start fragging out today. Finally, remember that all site subscribers get direct access to our coaches in Discord so that you can get personalized feedback just for you. If you're looking to climb the stack, be sure to check out our brand new aim courses today using that link below. And other than that, let's take a look at the rest of the things that you need to know to start building on your aim. Now, there are two techniques when it comes to crosshair placement that you are going to need to know. The first is called pre-aiming. And pre-aiming is actually done by placing your crosshair in the wall before you peek so that after strafing, it's exactly where you want it to be. Hence the term pre-aiming. This is done when you believe that your opponent could be holding a specific angle and you want to give yourself the best chance of sitting them down. Your goal is to peek the angle, have your crosshair directly on their head, and land the kill. This can even be done with something called a pre-fire, which basically means that you are going to shoot before you even see the target. You see, that we're humans, and it takes a couple milliseconds for our brain to process information that we see. And then it takes a couple seconds for our brain to send that signal into our hands so that we can shoot. Pre-firing is a way to get around all of this, because before you even are processing the information, you are shooting. This is a good way that you can get an advantage on your opponents if you're super duper confident that they're on that exact angle. But it's also just a more advanced way to utilize pre-aiming. This technique is still really good even if you're not pre-firing, but it makes aiming easier. Now, the second type of crosshair placement is called tracing. Tracing, again, is exactly what it might sound like. You are tracing the corner of an angle. If pre-aiming is done when you think somebody could be playing that angle, tracing is done when you don't know where your opponent could be. They could be in an off angle, they could be pushing you, they could be right around the next corner, they could be anywhere. In this case, you don't really want to pre-aim because if somebody comes around that corner and your crosshair is in the wall, you're going to be really caught off guard and have to adjust. Instead, you just keep your crosshair at the edge of the corner so that if somebody comes around the corner, you're fully prepared for them. And those are basically the two types of crosshair placement that you'll have to worry about. Of course, these things get a lot more advanced, but that's the gist of what you'll need to know for crosshair placement for now. Next, we've got to take a look at your sensitivity. Now, there are so many debates over sensitivity the last few years, and some people say that you need to keep it the same always and never switch it up, while some people are saying that switching it up can be really helpful. I'm here just to give you the facts. The reality is that top aiming pros change their sensitivity all of the time, oftentimes even depending on the type of scenario that they're playing. And remember that these are the best aimers in the world, so if they feel like changing their sensitivity every scenario is fine, it's definitely okay to switch up your sense in Valorant from time to time. Now, what we recommend is starting out with a sensitivity of 0.35 in-game on 800 DPI. This is pretty in the middle of what the average pro players run, and it's not going to be too extreme in terms of speed versus accuracy. Once you have set the sensitivity, you just see how it feels in range or in a few death matches. Do you feel like it's too fast or too slow? You can adjust it up and down and find something that's comfortable for you. Now, the reason that aim training pros change their sensitivity so much is because different scenarios require slightly different aiming skills, and some sensitivities are going to favor different skills. For example, it may be easier to control your crosshair on a lower sensitivity, where on a higher sensitivity, it might be easier to flick between targets because it moves faster. In Valorant, though, you're never just going to have to worry about one skill in a match, so you kind of want to find that middle ground. That being said, it can be good from time to time to switch up your sensitivity to train different skills. So if you've been playing on a really high sense for a while, you're probably pretty good at wrist aiming, but maybe you're not too good at using your arm a little bit more if you ever need to make a bigger flick. Lowering your sensitivity a bit for like a month to make sure that your arm is involved in the aiming process could help you practice that aspect of aiming and make you all around a better aimer. The other thing that changing your sensitivity can do is make you more focused on the actual process of aiming. Rather than just being completely autopilot and going with the flow, it might take a little bit more focus to maintain control of your mouse. It's just like how when working out, it can be really helpful to try new exercises and switch up your routine from time to time rather than just doing the exact same thing every single day. Now, sensitivity and crosshair placement aside, there's something that we really got to talk about that most players mess up with aiming, and that relates to shot confirmation. Most people don't implement the Bardo's method we talked about earlier, or even really think about their aim much at all. What they do is they just grip their mouse the way that feels natural, and when the enemy appears on the screen, they flick and shoot instantly. What you've got to recognize in Valorant is that there's something called threat levels. Different engagements that you take are going to have different levels of threat that will dictate the speed at which that you need to be aiming at your target. For example, when landing a trade for your teammate, the threat level is actually relatively low. Trades are a fundamental part of Valorant because you can only really shoot one opponent at a time. This means that if you swing with your teammate and you're the second one swinging, it's your responsibility to make sure that that kill happens. Now, the best way to do this is to take that extra millisecond to make sure that you land the trade. You don't want to spray at the target and risk whiffing because you're not the one in danger, your teammate is. It's okay if your teammate gets traded, that's fine, that's literally part of the game. But you have to guarantee that that trade comes in. You can't risk missing that shot. Now, you may have experienced a similar situation if you ever end up with a flank on your opponent. If you got the jump on somebody, you're behind them and they can't see you. Those are the shots that you can't afford to miss. It is a free kill. While aiming should feel natural and intentional, it also should feel strategic. A tactic that real snipers will employ before taking a shot is that they'll take a deep breath to help them control their weapon before they shoot. Now, the stakes obviously aren't quite the same for us, but we can employ the same thing in Valorant before we swing an angle to help yourself reset and give yourself the best chance of landing that shot. A lot of pro players do this, and it's something that we've discussed in our Spider Method course over at SkillCapped a bit more in depth. A lot of aiming is about confidence, and this is just a good way to build up that confidence and calm yourself. Sometime in Valorant, eventually, if it hasn't happened yet, you are going to be in a clutch when you get 2, maybe 3 kills and bring it down to a final 1v1. It's really important for that final kill that you take your time to land the shot. At the end of the day, it is the only one that really matters, and you've got to practice getting your nerves under control so that you don't miss it. Those are the rounds where the adrenaline is flowing, so it's really good to have a technique to calm yourself down. Now, another thing that can really help with your aim is a technique called movement reading. You are playing against real players, which is important because they are going to move like real players. You can use this to your advantage. Remember earlier when we were talking about when you get a flank on people and how you can't miss? These are oftentimes actually the easiest shots to miss. And the reason for that is because these players aren't going to move like they know that you're there. They're going to move like they're clearing angles still. With this in mind, you can use this to your advantage by understanding that their movements aren't just random. If they're looking to retake site, they're probably going to be moving towards site. Another example of this is that generally currently how people play the game is they like to move towards cover if they ever get into a fight. This means that if you swing an angle and catch somebody off guard, you can be pretty confident that they're going to run towards the nearest piece of cover. Knowing this, you can easily track their movements, basically knowing what they are going to do ahead of time. Now, this can be helpful because in Valorant, every bullet after your first becomes less and less accurate. This means that you really want to prioritize those first 2 to 4 bullets and make sure that you're on target. Otherwise, you're just likely to end up whiffing entirely on your opponent. Movement reading can also be helpful if you ever encounter anyone stuck in a corner or pinned against a wall. In this situation, the player is basically forced to fight and are far more likely to swing out away from the wall since they have only one direction that they can move. You can use this to your advantage by preparing for that swing and punishing them as soon as they reveal themselves. Finally though, depending on your aim level, you may want to look into developing an aim routine. Now, if you are super new to the game, you don't want it to be too intense. I've seen a number of guides suggesting that everyone has an hour-long aim routine that they do every single day to improve their aim. This is honestly ridiculous and out of touch for most players. Most people just probably don't have the time for an hour-long aim routine every single day on top of playing the actual game. And you are going to improve quickest by actually playing the game if you are new, not by messing around in some aim trainer for an hour. Don't get me wrong, if you really want to get the best aim possible, aim trainers can be helpful, and if you're someone who is trying to push Immortal or Radiant, it might be something worth taking a look at. But if you're below Platinum, you've gotta play the game more. Spend time in Deathmatch and Team Deathmatch for sure. Maybe do a few Sheriff-only DMs, get used to your movement and the rifles, learn how to burst fire and strafe. Spend some time in the range, practice on medium bots or eliminating 100 while strafing. But most importantly, play competitive. We recommend 3 matches a day, 5 days a week if you can. This comes out to around 2-ish hours a day, 10 hours a week. This helps you get enough reps in each day while also allowing you to play at your best for those 3 matches. If you play more than 3 matches a day, it's likely you'll experience some sort of fatigue resulting in your aim being a bit worse and making worse decisions. Not to say you won't improve faster if you play more than 3 matches a day. If you're really new, you probably will. Just saying it's not 100% necessary. But with just 3 games a day, you can make sure that you're fully focused in each map, and then afterwards you can reflect on how you played in those games. Were you implementing everything that we talked about? Did you take your time with your shots? How was your movement? That's what we recommend for people in the lower ranks, just to get your reps in the game. For people who want something a bit more advanced though, that's when you need to start working in a bit more of a routine. Still, an hour is quite a bit for most players, but you want something that can actually help you practice different fundamentals that will improve your overall aiming skill. That's exactly what we cover in our Calm Aim course over at SkillCapped, where we detail all of the proper techniques that you should be applying in your aim, included with our own aim training playlist that you can follow along with. It's less than 15 minutes, so you can do it every single day before you play, and it will help you practice all of the techniques that you'll need to become an aim pro in Valorant. Now, aiming can feel so hard sometimes, but we'll help make it stupid simple and get you ranking up in no time or your money back. Don't forget, our site subscribers also get direct access to our coaches in Discord so that you can get personalized feedback just for you. Now, nobody understands how to climb out of low elo more than us, so if you're looking to rank up, be sure to check out SkillCapped using the link below. And other than that, my name is Casey, and I'll catch you in the next one.